Everybody, and welcome to ABM Answered, the quick-fire demand generation and ABM video series, or at least that's what we aim for. Today, I am joined by Chris Spellman, who is head of demand gen at Miscreants, does the occasional bit of fractional marketing work on the side, and is an author of, it was 3 books, if I've got that right. Is that right?
Correct. A trilogy. Yep.
A trilogy, wonderful. Well, I guess that's like a good starting point. That's a lot to cover. A man of many talents. What is there anything you'd like to add to that? Maybe give a bit about your background, Chris.
Yeah. Have been in marketing for about 13 years now, and have specialized specifically in cybersecurity marketing since 2017.
Mm-hmm.
So have been with a couple of cyber companies. Now on the agency side, Miscreants really specializes 100% on cyber companies. We mostly do early stage companies actually, but we do have a couple of clients that are further on in their development. But yeah, it's been great so far.
Nice. Well, I'm hoping to extract a lot of golden nuggets from you because I know cyber is such a competitive space.
Yep.
But before that, to run you and the viewers again through the rules, Chris, in this case, will be given 7 questions to respond to all about ABM and demand generation.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe angling it towards cyber. The questions have come from and been adapted based on the data that we collected at Mixed Reality Rooms. But also now we're starting to include previous guests' questions as well, but where they've gone through and stated what their biggest headaches are with demand gen and ABM at the moment. So yeah, Chris, you ready to rock and roll?
Yeah, sure thing.
Cool. So challenge 1 that came in was like educating a non-technical audience, right? So question would be, how do you effectively kind of communicate complex cybersecurity solutions if you want to focus on cyber to non-technical decision makers?
Yeah, so I mean, at least in my experience with cyber marketing so far, I've been very fortunate to see that actually most of our ICP decision makers, buyers, are actually fairly technical. So it's actually, I know it's a little bit of a way around the question, but I will say just as preface that for the most part they have been technical. So that's been, easier to communicate a technical product to a technical audience.
Mm-hmm.
That said, I will speak to at least one experience I had when I was at OffSec, which is a cybersecurity training company. They offered training in something called penetration testing, which is based in area of cybersecurity on the what's called the offensive side. But essentially, what we had an important part of our ICP, our audience, was actually chief learning officers, which would fall under HR.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be essentially people at enterprises that we're looking to acquire training for their people. Didn't matter what kind of training it was, but obviously in our case it was cybersecurity training. And so for them, I think it was getting at this question. They were not technical in this area
Yeah.
whatsoever, but how do I communicate? How do we communicate the benefits to them? So I think really what it was is looking at communicating the benefits of the training for one thing, because they're probably not going to understand all the ins and outs of the technical aspect of the cybersecurity, what the training is actually providing necessarily, at least at a high level of understanding. But we could communicate the benefits of, this is going to help them advance in their careers, or the previous students that have gone through this training, have had this XYZ outcome, or have had this many promotions on average, or things like that. And it helped that our brand actually was, and I think is considered sort of like the Harvard of cybersecurity training, or at least when it comes to penetration testing specifically. So I think people kind of got to know the brand as prestigious. I mean, this would be like a 24-hour exam to get the certification. Literally, I mean, they let you sleep, but you're basically going for 24 hours straight, completing the exam. So very intensive, very, prestigious or intense. I would
Yeah.
say. So I think that that helped to be able to communicate those things. We would also use like things like videos that we would create that would be specifically for this type of ICP, the chief learning officer. We had blog posts. We had other typical marketing materials are really aimed at educating these sorts of buyers. So I know that's a little bit more specific to my case with that situation, but I think there are many cases that probably your listeners come across where, say, it's purchasing, or maybe it's I don't know, a more CFO or something like that that doesn't really understand the product, even in Martech. For example, like the marketers or the GTM folks would understand the product, but the CFO who's signing off on it would not. So I think there's definitely a case to be made for providing materials that would not just be communicating to the ICP, the direct ICP, but also communicating to I think especially finance, or especially just other relevant decision makers.
That would have been a better question to ask. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, like
Yeah, great.
because of the CFO comes into it. It's interesting that you mentioned L&D as well. I used to sell
Yep.
into that,
Oh,
but
great.
the challenge is it is a different type of challenge. I don't think I cracked it as well. So I think what you're saying actually makes a lot more sense. Just focus on the kind of like the outcomes rather than
Yep.
like the processes behind it.
Yep.
Solid answer, nice flying start.
Okay,
Challenge
great.
two: building trust in a crowded market. So, what strategies, as a question, are you
Mhm.
using to build trust with prospects, or recommending to your clients to build trust with prospects in an increasingly crowded market?
Yeah, so I think the way I would answer this one would be around thought leadership, essentially.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it's a crowded market in many cases. I mean, some of our clients are a little bit more cutting edge, or, I mean, it's like a different challenge. But I would say a lot of them, or in my experience, there are obviously always competitors. It does tend to be crowded. So I think thought leadership enables a company to go from being a commodity to being like all we think about, all the buyers think about when it comes to X product or X
Mhm.
need. So I mean, making that more practical, what does that look like? I mean, there's a lot of ways to do this, but something that I've always recommended to clients, or to within my own companies when I've been in house, is just something as simple as having a biweekly event, or it could be weekly, or whatever cadence it is, but just some sort of fairly regular event where the subject matter experts within the company
Mhm.
can really get to speak directly with an audience, answer their questions. Maybe it's an AMA format, which makes it easy for the SMEs. They don't have to prepare much in terms of like a presentation. Typically,
Okay.
I like to see it be a balance between, presentations, maybe 10 minutes of not necessarily slides, but maybe a screen share, or some sort of topic, or some sort of thing to just kick off the session, and then the balance be question and answer, and really just essentially be enabling the expertise of the subject matter expert to be captured in these sessions, which obviously are recorded. So it's a little bit like these podcasts, or this podcast that we're doing right now. But it can be something that can just be regularly scheduled, controlled, the narrative, like things like that. It's showing the expertise of the people within the company, and then of course that can be, as we've seen, slice and dice, put on LinkedIn, put on X, Twitter,
Mhm.
anywhere on social, on the website, turned into a blog. I mean, there's it can be a podcast itself, it could be YouTube long form video, it could be YouTube shorts. I mean, there's basically the distribution possibilities are endless in terms of being able
Mhm.
to get that message out there. But really, the point is that just half an hour, 45 minutes, maybe twice a month for a CEO if it's a small company, for maybe a chief evangelist if it's bigger, or CTO, or whoever it is within the company that makes sense to host these events. maybe switch out the subject matter experts to make it easier for them. But anyway, the point is just to be able to get these non-obvious insights out into the marketplace so that it's not just commodity ads, it's not just a commodity offering, it's really something that, yeah, obviously the goal is that you want the brand to be the thing that people think about when they think of X, essentially.
Yeah, in a way, both of those first two questions have come back to brand, right? Which is
Yep.
very interesting. Is there I won't. I'm conscious of time, but I won't uh, bully you with more follow-on questions. Well, just this one
Okay.
actually. Like, is there any specific tool, like for example, within cyber, not tool, like a platform, um, for example, like Twitter's actually, or X, sorry, what we call it, I've read somewhere it's more for the sophisticated user. Like, have you found success within cyber marketing on pushing this thought leadership onto a certain tool, or is it more just still predominantly LinkedIn?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's for us, the cyber audience is really in a lot of places. I mean, they're in front of the computer all day, every day, all the time,
Yeah,
pretty much. I mean, that's what they love. So,
yeah,
I mean, a lot of us are, but especially in cyber. So, I think LinkedIn, X, but then, I mean, I guess the way I would answer is Reddit actually is probably, I want to say number one, but it's
interesting.
pretty high up the list. Reddit organic. I think it's hard to run ads on there. LinkedIn ads are more effective if you're going to run ads on social, but you're right. We haven't had a lot of success with Reddit in different contexts I've been in, but for Reddit organic, being able to push out these sorts of thought leadership, yeah, it does tend to be pretty successful. So.
So that's a golden nugget. I wouldn't even have thought of that really. Great. Problem three: addressing rapidly evolving threats, which is quite ironic in the cyberspace. But like, how do you keep kind of your ABM demand gen campaigns? I guess more demand gen in this case, relevant.
Mm,
So you might spend. I imagine like the turnaround for campaigns, for example, must be like quite quick. You can't really in cyber maybe plan 12 months ahead, and because
mm.
things change so quickly. How do you kind of keep that fluid model, marketing model or process in going?
Yeah, I mean that's true. It's a balancing act between long term planning and short term
Mm-hmm.
kind of reaction or need. But I will say that cyber threats are ever evolving. I mean they're constantly evolving as you said. But the fact is that essentially all enterprises are targets all the time, and that's nothing new.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't change. So, the fact that we as cyber companies can speak to the enterprise or whoever the ICP is, communicating the fact that, as they very well know, that they either have been hacked or will be hacked or et cetera. So it's kind of a that's consistent, which helps with planning. But yeah, I will say I was actually going to mention for this one that testimonials have been tremendously helpful to make things relevant and concrete.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It could be something that's relevant to that particular ICP or even particular accounts in an ABM situation. What the use case is, or what the the case study is, and going beyond testimonials into case studies. So I guess just to comment on case studies, I've found that a lot of case studies are really not that helpful, and even ones that I've produced in the past have not been that helpful because we oftentimes the customer doesn't really want to give too many pull back the curtain too much either. I mean, and one thing, they may not even let you use their name or logo or anything like that. But even if they do, it tends to be kind of fluffy sometimes. So making it quantitative as much as possible with the results. So the case study is X percentage of this improved, or XYZ was reduced. Yeah, all those sorts of things. Keeping numbers in there, or putting numbers in there, is super important. And then also for case studies, I've mentioned that video is very important. So if it's just like a PDF or something like that, that's fine. But
Mm,
if you can get the customer to, even, it doesn't have to be some huge expensive photo shoot on site and everything like that. I mean, that's great, but it could even just be they take their smartphone and shoot a 1 minute video of themselves. I've seen that done before, and it's actually been in some ways better because it shows like an
a
authenticity
bit
and
raw.
like a raw realness. It's not just
Yeah.
like some glossy, fancy thing. So more something people could relate to, I guess.
That
So
that's some nice advice for some startups that like are on a budget. Like it's not
yep,
because you're poor and you can't invest in a big fancy film equipment. It's more raw and effective and relatable. Okay, so that's super interesting. So stick to the basics, like the core, strip it all back and stick to the
yep,
core marketing principles. Again, build the brand so that when they are ready, like things do adapt, they know who to come to, as opposed to just constantly trying to like time the market perfectly. Like there was a cyber leak and then like everyone like targets them kind of thing. It's like just a
yeah.
long game.
Yeah, I mean, you can do both,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, but I think it's probably more important to do the things I mentioned, and then important but not as important to comment on CrowdStrike doing this or this one. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's also, you got to be careful because you don't want to call out competitors in a way that's. I mean, I've seen that done distastefully and in a way that kind of backfires.
Mm,
So yeah, so it's yeah, you have to be timely, news hacking, but also careful, I think so.
for sure. Chris, how are you doing for time? We're gonna have to go real quick fire now.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Problem four: navigating long sales cycles, aka nurturing. Right. So
Yep.
obviously, all ABM campaigns and demand gen campaigns sales cycles are longer. How do you, innovatively, I guess, maintain engagement with target accounts over like the long term, especially within cyber? And then I was on a call with, I can't remember who it was. Well, actually, was it you? It might have been you, Chris. People only come
Okay.
to you when there was you. You said it, yeah. People only come to you typically in cyber when they've got a problem. So it's like that's when the kind of like the learning, like they really kind of lock in and learn. So like, how do you kind of maintain that relationship before they have a problem? I guess, or after the initial contact, they know who you are, and like, yeah. But how do you kind of keep that thought leadership piece going?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the way I would answer this is actually sort of a follow up to the early answer
Mm-hmm.
about thought leadership and so on. But I think that I mean, to keep it brief, like focusing on brand building and creating a category, and it really comes down to not being the commodity, but being like the solution that people think about, the buyers think about in your space. So I think that. Thought leadership is really the way to go. So I think that you want to be the one that buyers go to for information and insights, essentially. So
Mm-hmm.
they're not just viewing you as a vendor that they're considering to buy. I mean, obviously that's great, but that they actually consider you to be like a place to go to learn things. So I had a couple of examples I thought of for that. So like the record from Recorded Future, which is a big cyber company. The record's basically like a in-house I don't know how to say it, but like journal, basically like a an in-house news source that is put out by a vendor, but is very neutral and very people follow it just for that for them. The other one maybe to mention is Hockey Stack for marketing
Yeah.
analytics resources. I know they've made a huge splash on LinkedIn. So anyway, I'll keep it brief, but that's sort of my answer for that.
Yeah, hockey stack are everywhere. Like
Yeah,
I'm super impressed. They're not even like that big of a team, are they? But they
no,
feel
they're
like
not.
they dominate the world. The last three questions are from previous guests,
Great,
and this one is from Vasilios Kospanos, who is actually the EMEA and APAC regional marketing manager, lead the marketing charge at BugCrowd. So
great.
just up your street. He asked, how do you kind of approach or address data sensitivity and privacy concerns within like the ABM demand gen campaigns that you run? Uh, and I've noticed this too. particularly within like the cybersecurity space, you need to kind of be even more careful because they're kind of like clued up, I guess, with their
Yes.
rights and things, which is a good thing. It's important. But yeah, how do you kind of do you have any like is it a I guess you're probably in autopilot now, and you can run these campaigns like notice well, you know what's right and what's wrong. But like, how would
Right.
you, I guess, the first step to advise a brand what the considerations when it comes to data sensitivity and privacy?
Yeah, I mean, I guess two things I'll mention. One is that when you use very good tools, which some of the ones I like would be HubSpot or CookieBot or
Mm-hmm.
any of the sort of marketing automation platforms or cookie banners or kind of related tools for email marketing and so on. When they a lot of times they make it easier to do this. So I think HubSpot, for example, just they kind of tell you what you can do, what you can't do. They enable you to delete information from customers or users, etc. In different ways that are relevant to GDPR, for example. But so I think that's one thing is just use good tools that will really help with this,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to ones that won't. And then the other thing I'll mention is, really just getting familiar, even if it's at a high level of like GDPR, CCPA, CPRA. I mean, there's many of these proliferation of all of these different regulations now on marketers essentially, but GDPR being the big one. But I had the fortune of being at a cyber company that actually had a CISO in house, even though we weren't that big. It
Nice.
was important to have a CISO, even though we're 200 people or something. So I think that it was a real benefit because I was able to actually speak directly with the CISO, and this is actually when GDPR came out, I think in 2018 or whatever it was, and just being able to learn directly from a source what you can and can't do and what we need to do to prepare for it and changes we need to make and so on. Obviously that's not always going to be possible, so I think just researching, being in communities that would be able to have people that would know these things and answer questions, like say the demand community from metadata that you and I belong to, so
Yeah.
things like that, just being able to ask experts about it essentially.
Staying in the loop, yeah, because it
Yep.
isn't almost impossible to do it all yourself and like keep up to date with everything yourself. So it is
Right.
important to have a network. I learned that from you. Question six. I'm super excited about this one from Amelia Taylor, who is the strategic growth partner at CapChase and founder of the Revenue Table. She asked if you could take any one of Chris Walker's strategies, whether it be like attribution or conversions, etc., and challenge it. What one would it be?
Yeah, so I had to think about this one because obviously, as you know, I'm a big fan of Chris Walker, Refine Labs. I really like a lot of what they have to say. The one thing that maybe is more of a nuance, or I don't know, maybe not nuance is the right word, but kind of like an exception. In some cases would be blog posts. So I know that Chris Walker himself specifically has said that he wrote a bunch of blog posts, very long, detailed, expert level advice and so on. And then he published them, and then they went nowhere. Like, he tried to promote them on LinkedIn. He tried to do what he could, and then he switched over to like videos on LinkedIn, taking those blog posts, turning them into LinkedIn posts that are shorter. Doing the podcast and all the stuff he's been doing the last 5 years, and then that caught fire and became super successful. So he kind of maybe he's changed his mind on this recently. I'm not sure, but at least it seemed like there was a huge de-emphasis on the written word and on blog posts specifically for most companies. I think that for a technical buyer, which is what we've been talking about today, for the most part, especially in cyber,
Mm-hmm.
for a technical buyer, they do like blog posts. They do like being able to see data, graphs, charts, diagrams easily that they can consume. I know you can throw those in videos and stuff like that, but yeah, I think to make it easier for them and just to scan through, a lot of times they just want to get the information in 5 minutes and not have to watch an hour long video, listen to a long podcast. So I think that if you have a more technical buyer, I would probably lean more into blog posts or more into the written word. I'm not saying ebooks are necessarily a good thing, but just having information on on your website in written form of various kinds, with et cetera, I think can be very helpful. And then I think the other point I'll make on this is that I do agree with the Refine Labs way of doing things, that you can actually still be video first, you can still be podcast first, you can still be audio first, whatever. But you just hit kind of like what I was talking about earlier with the bi-weekly events that are transformed into all these different things. So one of the things you can transform a podcast into is a blog post. So
Mm.
not just a transcript, but you actually kind of embellish it. You make have a content marketer work on it, and turn it into a piece that is good on its own. But yeah, so you can be video first, but also text based as well.
Solid answer. Um, Also, what I'm currently seeing, or I've noticed, like in a trend like the last few weeks, is people trying to turn their blog posts into like videos using AI.
Yes.
So it's weird how it's like interchangeable. But I'm with you on. I used to sell mentoring or like market mentoring software. Written
Yep.
word was super important for like our buyers as well, because in a way you can actually scan it quicker than videos in some cases.
Right.
Right, you okay for 5 more minutes? Last question.
Yeah. Got
Cool.
a little more time. Yeah, that's fine.
Question 7, and I love this question. This might be my favorite question that was ever asked by Emily York Goldney, who's the strategy and business director at Clarify. She asked if the sky was the limit in terms of budget. So I'm going to add be as unconventional as possible if you want. What would your best in class recommendation be for a campaign to drive engagement? And I will add to this like on a one-to-one basis. Like you're just trying to close that like mega account. Do you have any like crazy things, or have you seen some crazy things? Like what would you do? How would you approach it?
Yeah, so I guess I mean I can maybe answer this in both ways of like more brand building and also more one to
Yeah.
one. But so maybe on more of the brand building side, but I think it can help with one to one is really do what Recorded Future does with the record, which I mentioned earlier briefly. So it's basically you're building a media company within your company. That's kind of a cliche now, but what they did was actually hired journalists. They really made it into a real journal that was respected in the industry, and people would read for actual newsworthy sources. It's not just like fluff. So if you have subject matter experts writing real journalistic pieces, not just content writers, nothing against content writers, but people that actually are real experts in what they're writing about. And then you can really own social with this. So I know that I've heard from the CMO of Recorded Future, that Tom Wentworth, that he's just given examples of like something. They publish a piece and it gets like more than 1 million impressions on X, Twitter, and then these ones get this many web visits, and this. So I mean, this sort of thing can really be super effective and kind of unconventional. To answer more of the one-to-one piece, and also kind of something that's, I mean, I guess is sort of unconventional these days, is just kind of go crazy with direct mail. So I think that people say, "Oh, everyone's working from home, you can't do it anymore." But I think that if your buyer is in the enterprise, then like 100% work from home is kind of a relic of COVID times for the most part.
Mhm.
So I think a lot of these buyers really do have a presence in an office, really do have an address you can send to. And I mean, I mean, the sky's the limit with direct mail. Things can be just super customized to the specific type of company it is, or the person that it is, or things you learn about them on LinkedIn or social media or the internet or so on and so forth. So you find out what college they went to, and you send them something like some swag for the college, or just any kind of embellishment upon like their background, essentially, can be great. And then the last thing, again, this is maybe more on brand awareness and building a brand, but I think there's a number of things that can be done in that area. So like I really like what Gong did with the Super Bowl commercials. If you have budget, maybe not every company has budget, but a Super Bowl commercial type thing. Publicity stunts are a lot cheaper and can also be very effective, say, especially around events. So, like, we have Black Hat, we have RSA as two huge events in cyber. Do some sort of publicity event. Hopefully, not something that gets you in trouble, like some of the recent ones that Black Hat have gotten certain companies in trouble. But anyway, out of office, or sorry, out of home, ads, billboards, etc. I think can also be kind of an interesting, lesser done tactics. So yeah, some of those things.
Interesting. What worked? So we have a client in cyber who have found
Yep.
like success. Set the gift is Lego, and around
Okay.
Christmas time, around this year, because Lego's just so expensive, but it's actually like got a use to it, and like they give it to their kids and stuff for like the
Yep.
Christmas time, and it's super super popular. It's going down like a treat. But it's interesting to think like that because I think a lot of gifts and swag are just they're just rubbish. It's like why
Yeah.
bother sending it? Is there
Right.
any
Right.
gift that you know that like resonates really well within cyber?
Yeah. I mean, I think something that's kind of dorky or kind of just like throwback kitsch. I don't know. Things that trying to think if I can think of an example, but yeah, like some Star Wars thing or some, I don't know what, just something that's like a little bit, I mean, not to stereotype cyber people, but obviously they tend to be maybe a little bit more eccentric or a little bit more interested in like the off the beaten path sort of cultural stuff. So yeah, so I think you just kind of have to know who your ICP is in not just in the professional context but in a personal context.
Mm-hmm.
And really, that comes down to talking to your customers. Not a point that I haven't made yet, but it's very important that you really need it as a marketer to directly talk to customers, and I think marketers way too infrequently do this. So if you get a sense, if you're talking to your customers regularly, and you talk about business, you talk about personal things, you talk about whatever culture, you'll know what to send at that point. You'll understand your ICP very well, and you'll have a good idea of what they like.
Hey, don't rule out Star Wars conventions. I'd be there. But how do
Yep.
you talk to your customers? You literally find them in the CRM, pick up the phone, or would you join like a sales call with like the customer success manager? Like how do you initiate that contact with customers as marketing?
Yeah, I think there's different ways to do it. I mean, sometimes it can be challenging because the CSM or customer success doesn't really want marketers to touch an account, or maybe sales doesn't want to, or whatever. Or they want to be on there, which if that's what has to happen, that's fine. But I
Hmm.
think maybe just a one-to-one conversation with just the marketer and just the customer is ideal. But yeah, so it could be you set it up through the CSM. You could be maybe reach out directly. Probably better to go through the CSM because it's more of like an introduction.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you kind of maybe give like we're on the topic of gifts. Give a little gift for half hour of their time to kind of do some customer research and understand the ICP more and stuff like that. And you frame it up with like kind of understanding more of what they're looking for, what their challenges are, like those sorts of things. But you can kind of sprinkle in a little bit more personal questions as well that kind of lighten up the conversation and also help with direct mail and so on.
Okay, that's good advice. Chris, we've made it. Congrats.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll ask, and thank you for sharing your wisdom today, is do you have a question for our next guest?
Yeah, so something I'm always like asking people is, and here's my question: is like, who are your top three marketing thought leaders, or it could be GTM thought leaders, and what's a key insight, or what do you consider like to be their key insight that you learned from each of them? So, whoever it is, three people, and then what's like the best thing that they say, so to speak, that's really helpful.
That's a good question. So, like, what's their tagline? What's their skill? I guess what can they help specialize in?
Yeah, what are they? What are they most influential for, about, etc. So
Wicked. All right, I'll get it included. Thank you very much, Chris. I'll chat soon.
yeah, sounds good.
Cheers.